was so fulfilling to be able to work that way, to have an artist tell you the story he wants to tell on canvas over here, and have you be able to go get the right paints and the right canvas for him to work on.
Welcome to another episode of the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. I'm Chris Bush.
And I am Dean Slider.
On the Filmosophers, we talk about film and filmosophy with the people who make and who love the movies. And we are delighted to have as our guest on today's show, producer, assistant director, a man who has worn many hats in many films, dozens and dozens of films and TV productions over many years, known for, among others, Field of Dreams, The Last Starfighter, The Fugitive, Brian Frankish. Brian, welcome to the Filmosophers Show.
Thank you very much, Chris. How are you today?
And we're good. You have bragging rights that you're intimately connected with, I think, one of the great fan favorite films of all time. That's quite an alliteration, Field of Dreams. And it's a film I've seen a dozen times. To me, it's, our generation's It's a Wonderful Life. There's a magic to it. And we just would love to hear if you have any, reflections or any great war stories about your experience with that.
Lots of them. I had just finished a film with Phil Alden Robinson called In the Mood with Beverly D'Angelo and Talia Balsam and Patrick Dempsey. And it was a little inexpensive World War II rom-com made in Los Angeles. And we made it for nothing. And when Larry Gordon picked up Field of Dreams and turned to Phil Robinson and said, let's go. And, he was greenlit. Phil was asked who he would like to work with. And he said, well, I worked with Brian Frankish and I liked it a lot. So I got this call from Terry Nelson, who was head of production at Universal at the time. And they sent me the script. Well, I was getting on a plane and I was getting ready to go to the South Pacific for a vacation after doing a whole bunch of pictures. And Tanis, my wife, and I read that script to each other in the bungalow on Bora Bora for the first time. And it's one of the, because she's an actress and a writer. And so we read the script, we read it out loud, playing all the roles and doing the whole thing. And, Phil's agent at the time used to say that screenplay was the last 10 pages were written on onion paper, because just boom, it hits you right in the face. I remember crying the first time I read the screenplay just from reading it. And Phil Robinson is probably one of the best writers I have ever worked with, besides, well, there are a lot of great writers I've worked with, like John Milius and so on and so forth. But Phil really captured that. And it was really quite amazing. Well, I came back from that vacation and said, I'm in. And I turned to Phil and I said, who do you want to work with? He said, well, I don't want John Lindley again, because we had him on In the Mood. And I wonder who else we can get. So I got up my cast and crew list, and I've been in touch. I'm always in touch with my crews. And I said, who's interested? And to a man, everybody who read that script said, I'm in. And they all came.
If you film it, they will come.
Yeah, exactly. But I set up an office over at International Producer Service, Jimmy Summers' place, where I used to do commercials back in the 60s and 70s, just an independent production office. And Phil, as a matter of fact, came in one day and he said, Brian, I want Rod Dado to coach the team and put together the baseball elements. And I said, oh, hey, great choice. Rod Dado, famous baseball coach from USC. I said, okay, great. So I found him at Dart Industries, called him up and got him on the phone. I says, are you interested in this? He said, send me the script. So everybody I sent the script to said, oh boy, let's come on. You want to meet? I'd like you to meet my director. He said, yeah, sure. Tell me, Brian, do you happen to know where the Toluca Lake Golf Club is? And I said, I can see it out my window. He said, can you meet me for their lunch next Tuesday and bring your director? I said, we'll be there. Phil and I driving up to the Lookalike Golf Club and for lunch. And there's this roly-poly man with white hair, black suit, hanging out outside. Phil and I get up and walk to him, and Rod Dado kind of likes to touch people. How you doing, Tiger? How you doing, Tiger? Nice to see you. Great, terrific. So Phil and Rod were touching each other, getting to say hello. And he turns to me, Rod did, and he said, "Tell me, Frankish, that's your name, right?" Yes, sir, it is. He said, "Tell me something, boy. Was your father Jack Frankish?" And I went, yeah, that was my dad. Well, I wasn't only a coach at USC, I was a student there in 1935. And your father was my best friend.
Oh, wow.
What the heck is Field of Dreams about anyway?
That's great.
Wow.
That's great. You know, I'm reminded, actually, maybe you could just touch on this story real quickly about the story I've read about the naming of the film, how its original name, how the name got changed, and what happened when Phil Robinson called W.P. Kinsella, the author, to reluctantly tell him that the movie's name had been changed from Shoeless Joe to Field of Dreams.
When we released the film in Universal publicity, they didn't know what they had. They didn't even know how to market it. I mean, if you look at the poster today, there's Kevin standing, alone with his feet on a baseball diamond, and a big circle of the clouds around him. They had no idea how to even begin how to market the picture. And the book that is the option of rights on the picture by W.P. Kinsella is called Shoeless Joe. And we all shot the picture under the title Shoeless Joe. The slate said Shoeless Joe. And that's everything that we put our whole heart and soul into Shoeless Joe. And because Joe Jackson had his nickname was Shoeless Joe. Anyway, Phil calls me up after we had done a couple of previews and so on and so forth. And we were in post-production, finishing up the picture, getting ready to go for the release. And he said, Brian, I can't believe this. What's wrong, Phil? They want to change the title and call the picture Field of Dreams. Phil was devastated. I mean, he's a writer. He believes in what's on the page. And he was heartbroken at the time. And we called up W.P. Kinsella from the speakerphone in my office and said, Bill, they're changing the title to, they're dumping Shoeless Joe. The studio is changing the title to Field of Dreams. And W.P. Kinsella came back with, that's interesting, because Shoeless Joe wasn't my title. That was Houghton Mifflin Press's title. I submitted the galleys on that book under the title of Dreamfield.
Wow.
This is the kind of stuff that happened over and over again on that picture. I mean, it was absolutely amazing.
There was magic in the air on this production.
Well, to speak of magic in the air, one night when we were shooting the reveal of Ray Liotta on the field, Daddy, there's a baseball man on your field, and they all ran down. We started shooting, and this cloud, this mist, hovering mist over the field, just came down and came down during the entire night until about 4:30 or 5 in the morning. It started to impede the lights that we had put on the field. And Phil just kept shooting and kept shooting. He said, now that's in the picture.
Yeah. Cue the mist.
Yeah.
Cue the mist. Right.
And there was all kinds of things like that.
Brian, what was there? I seem to recall a story that in some early incarnation of the book, its title was the Kidnapping of Jd Salinger.
well, that's interesting because the Jd Salinger story is very interesting because when Kinsella had to obtain the rights, had to prove he had the rights to all of the material, the whole role of that James Earl Jones played, Terrence Mann, was J.D. Salinger in the book.
Right. By name.
By name.
Right.
And it was like Kinsella went to, who was the character that Kevin played, went to find him and found him. And that whole myth that was actually written in the book is, and reduplicated in style with James Earl Jones, actually happened, so to speak. Houghton Mifflin Press were going, what can we do about the rights on this situation? Well, they got in touch with Salinger, and Salinger is a recluse. He doesn't believe in anybody using his name for anything, and he's got lawyers who come down on everybody who does that. And for some strange reason, he turned to everybody there and said, okay, for the publication of this book only, I will allow the use of my name. No circumstances coming out of this book or wherever this book is going to be duplicated will I allow my name to be used in association with the story. So that's where this brilliant writer named Phil Alden Robinson came up with a Terrence Mann character. And the whole essence that was within the J.D. Salinger section of the book. And it was lovely choice.
The author, W.P. Kinsella of Swiss Joe and Dreamfield, it's not a common name. There's a J.D. Salinger short story with a character named Ray Kinsella.
Yeah,
I believe.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah,
that is true.
I don't know if that's coincidence or that's what prompted, Kinsella to kind of conjure up the idea of Salinger as a character.
I can't answer that.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Were you there on set just about every day?
Oh yes. I would open the company every day because I was not only the executive producer, I was the unit production manager, and I also played the umpire. I would open up the company, make sure they had all the toys to play with, turn them loose, and then I'd go set up the next day, the next day after that, and then come back and close the company and ask them, how'd you do today? And that's sort of, my modus operandi when making pictures.
Yeah. Now, do you remember your line as the umpire if I cue you?
Sure.
Frank Whaley as the young Moonlight Graham is standing in the plate, and he's there's a brushback ball, and he says to the ump, how about a warning?
Sure, kid. Watch out, you don't get killed.
There we go.
Safe, time. Yeah, that's what came after that.
How many takes?
Not many, But it's funny because we did one sequence when the players slid into home, and I did safe, that the catcher came around and started, what do you mean safe? And he started getting in my face. We went, don't get in my face, the guy, he's out. Get in my face, hit me again, touch me again, and you're out of here. Touch me again. That's it, you're up. Back to the corn, all of you, you're out, I've got an outtake of that on camera.
That's great. That image of the cornfield as being a portal to another dimension. There's something, I don't know what it is about it that's so captivating or engaging. Dean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't, funnily enough, in the book that I've been writing that's coming out next month, I have a chapter on Oklahoma, on the Rodgers and Hammerstein show Oklahoma, and I do a riff for a page or two on the corn is as high as an elephant's eye, and it's American, it's a Native American vegetation, staple food, and it does grow high, like it's like the magic beanstalk. It's that kind of, you know, aspiration from the earth into the heavens.
It's very difficult to grow, especially when you're in a season of extreme drought.
Yeah, there was a kind of a one in generation drought, I remember
Exactly.
reading.
I
And the
mean,
grass too, the grass on the infield.
oh yeah,
turned brown. You had the groundskeeper for the Dodgers, I heard, was your groundskeeper for the baseball diamond. And he said, well, we'll do what we do in LA. We paint the grass green.
yeah, it was yeah, it was a food dye color.
Okay. Actually, I got one more for you about corn. Centuries ago, corn was a lot of different colors. Now you occasionally see, you know, purple corn and red corn that's used mostly ornamentally, but food corn was all these colors. And there was one bushel of this sweeter, starchier yellow corn that was rescued from a fire in the time, I believe, of George Washington. And all the corn that we have now was, all the yellow corn that we eat was descended from this bushel that someone pulled out of a fire.
Wow.
And now it's all GMO.
Just right.
Unfortunately.
Well, Eldon Trum was my farm advisor in that situation.
Uh-huh.
And we couldn't plant, the ground was frozen until the 1st of May. And we had started shooting on Memorial Day weekend, as a matter of fact. And we planted that 26 acres. And we're looking at, of course, in Iowa, they don't believe in irrigation. They believe in God.
Right.
You know, the Lord will supply.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept watching the weather, and here comes a front. Oh, hey, where to go? You know,
Mm-hmm.
another front, boom. West to east, these fronts would come through and nothing would fall from the sky. And one of the things I had done when I had insured the picture, when you insure a motion picture, you're allowed to insure 12 actors and like 3 other creatives that can't be replaced while you're making the film. And I turned to my insurance agent and I said, look, I want to insure the corn like it's an actor. If it gets sick, I need to have the insurance company come in and help me work it out so that I can make the corn, have time to make the corn healthy again, because no corn, no movie. So they worked out an insurance policy on it with me that included a policy on Burt Lancaster, and like for $13,000. Burt Lancaster called me up and he said, I hear they want a separate insurance policy on me. I lost old Gringo because they didn't think I was insurable. But I don't have a problem in Italy, and I don't have a problem almost any place else. But look, if this is a big hardship, let me know. And I said, no, I think I got it covered. So I had both Burt Lancaster and the corn insured, along with another bunch of other actors and the director and the cinematographer.
He's wonderful.
He is. He was, sitting with him in the looping session was great, but that's another story.
Oh, it must have been fun working with him.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
Archie,
the situation is
Mike Graham.
I called up the studio. I mean, where there was home plate, I put a 5-foot tall pole with feet and inches marked off on it. And I took my old fashioned Polaroid camera, which we were using 35 years ago. And I would send pictures of this into the studio and let them know how stuff wasn't growing. And I said, I'm in deep doo-doo here. I have a start date of this and such and so, and I'm not going to make it. I think that we have to scrub the picture.
Oh.
And I'm only 4 million in. It's a $11 million motion picture in those days. And so Terry Nelson said, yeah, I think you have to. And so I called up the insurance company and I said, I think we got a real problem here. I think you're going to have to buy the movie. And they got, what? Oh, why? And I gave them my farm advisor contact. I gave him the weather guy I was using back there. I gave him the state film board. I gave him the state office for climate and the state agricultural people. I had done my research. I said, go ahead, do your own research. And about 3 days later, they were on the plane to me. And I had already worked out a plan. I mean, Eldon Trum, brilliant. Had already made my deal with John Deere. And so the local John Deere people were ready to give me a tractor with a big outdrive on it. And he found a big, it was like a huge industrial agricultural gun that they pumped out pig troughs with. And they would fertilize entire fields with this. And he'd arranged to get one of those. And the insurance company came to me and said, well, what can we do? I said, well, I'll tell you what. You see this little stream running underneath the bridge in the very front of the property? Well, there's a little pond down here that the governor has said I can dam up and create a water source, enough of a water source. And then what can you do? So, well, I got this big tractor and I got this big machine and we can water this 26 acres of corn, but it's going to cost. And I'll tell you what else I can do. I've got all of my interiors scheduled for the end of the picture to cover me for rain when I'm on the ball field, because we had all those interiors inside the house. And I said, I'll shoot up all those interiors if you'll cover me if I get rained out at the end of the movie for my daily costs. Well, they bought it. They paid for all of the irrigation, and I got rained out a couple of days at the end of the picture, and I collected $300,000 on that insurance policy. But we have a movie.
This story gets filed under what a producer does.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
And I heard that the corn grew so tall, in fact, that in some of the scenes where Mr. Costner was walking in the cornfield, they had to stand on planks because it was too far over his head. And the neighboring farms were very irate because their fields were in drought.
Yeah, we were the only.
Field was.
We were the only field. We were the only corn in Western Iowa that summer.
One more question. There's been an enduring mystery around this film, and that has to do with the voice that comes into Costner's head and says the famous line, "If you build it, he will come." And also later on in the movie, "Go the distance," when he's at the Fenway Park and watching the big screen. There's been a lot of conjecture around who it is. Maybe Steve Martin, Ed Harris, Ray Liotta, Costner himself are names I've heard. I've read that Phil Robinson may be the only one who knows, and he's never disclosed. Is that true, or do you know? And
well, I know, but Phil has made me promise that I wouldn't divulge that.
Okay, how ironclad is that promise?
Well, when I got the Frank Capra Award this year at the DGA, which is a Lifetime Achievement Award, I got Phil Robinson to introduce me for the podcast, and he and I are still very, very tight. And he is such a fine writer and such a grand gentleman. I mean, his introduction for me on that Zoom for the award ceremony was magnificent, and I want to keep it magnificent.
Right.
I mean, you're on the right track. Amongst the names, it's that type of person did it. One of those types of persons.
One of those types of persons.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty vague clue.
Well, Well, I think, now that we all know who Deep Throat was, it's good to have one enduring mystery.
One enduring mystery, right? The way David Lynch refuses to talk about the baby in Eraserhead. This will be an enduring film. But maybe you could bury the answer in a time capsule to be opened, in 2088.
But Brian, in that film, are all the actors doing the baseball playing, or are there any ringers in there?
No ringers. The on-camera speakers did all of their own stuff. I mean, Kevin's an amazing athlete. I mean, we had no one was pinch hitting for anybody. I would have individual day players, for little lines here and there, and I would go up to Phil on the field and say, "Okay, the left fielder has lines in next week's work. Who am I flying in for that?" He said, "Call Margie Simpson." I gave her a name last night, so I'd call Margie, casting director, get the name and fly the guy in, and he would do his stuff and then go away. And I walked up to him and I said, "Okay, next week's the umpire. What are you going to do with that one?" And he said, he leaned down from the crane. He was up on the crane. He said, "Go to the makeup trailer. Know what to do." Now I had 12 years of beard and hair down to my shoulder blades. Well, I came out of that makeup trailer like a shorn sheep who had just gotten it all. It was a great experience. I really enjoyed it.
It's a great film memory to hold on to. I did see you speak in Fairfield, Iowa, when you were working with our mutual friend Jerry Yellen.
Yes.
Who is a World War II fighter pilot, and he had a marvelous story. His son, was it Michael or Robert, was married one of the sons married a Japanese girl.
Robert.
And when Jerry went to Japan for the wedding, he met his future in-laws. The father of the bride was in the Japanese military during World War II.
And this is Jerry's first book.
There's of War and Weddings, and Jerry had to reconcile his hatred of the Japanese with the fact that his daughter was marrying to the family. It's really a beautiful story, I think, of healing and redemption. And would you want to comment on that for a moment?
The summer after Field of Dreams, I was the keynote speaker at the Iowa Utilities Convention, and I had flown out of Los Angeles into Dallas, Fort Worth, and changed planes and was headed towards Des Moines from Dallas, Fort Worth. And the plane was empty. There were only two guys on board, myself and this white-haired gentleman who kept pacing back up and down. And he came down next to my seat. I was sitting on an aisle, and he said, "Excuse me, but are you in the motion picture business?" Listen, I was not wearing a baseball cap that said Raiders of the Lost Art. I had no signs on me saying, "Hi, I made Field of Dreams in Iowa," which is the reason I was going to Des Moines as a keynote speaker for their convention. And I said, I wasn't reading Variety, and so I looked up from a magazine and I went, "Yeah, why?" And he said, "Move over. I got a story to tell you." So
That's Jerry.
So I moved over and I sat down in the middle seat, and he sat down in the aisle seat, and he proceeded to tell me the story of his life. And I found it extremely interesting. And I said, "This is really interesting." And I said, "Well, what are you doing with it?" And he said, "Well, I have working with a writer in New Jersey, and we're developing a screenplay. Would you read it?" And I said, "Sure, I'd be happy to." So I gave my business card and said goodbye and went to the convention center. After we landed, he went where he was going. I worked with he and his writer, who I'm not going to name because it didn't work out. It was really, Jerry got together with the wrong person. And I went through like 4 or 5 scripts with them with notes and so on and so forth. And every time I'd come back with notes, she would go, yeah, and then do a rewrite and send back the same stuff that she had written before.
Oh.
And it was just, I just kind of went, "I'm sorry, this isn't working. The dialogue is not happening. Jerry, I'm sorry." And I had 2 studio readers read this screenplay on the side, gave the notes, and they wrote their readers' reports. And I sent the readers' reports both to Jerry and this writer. And of course, you know, the writer went ballistic. And I said, see you around. And
On to the next project.
yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah, it happens, I'm sure, in this business. So I'm curious to know, you had mentioned earlier John Milius, who's also one of our favorites, and famously a colorful, wild character. Any great war stories about Milius?
John's fabulous. I did Flight of the Intruder with John, and I met Mace Neufeld on that picture also. Unfortunately, lost Mace 3 weeks ago. But John and I became great friends on that, and we were in Kauai doing the crash site. I'd find John at the craft service table, because John liked. And I said, Steve Danton was the first AD, and I said, and John would turn to me and say, every day he'd say, what are we doing today? You know, because, you know, he's nuts, and wonderfully nuts though. And I would say, call sheets here. There goes the first assistant director. Go keep up with him. He knows what's going on. So, and he was just a great person to work with. And the things he would come up with in the moment. I remember we were shooting Barbers Point Air Force Base. It had painted all of the A4s that were on the flight line. We painted them on only one side. I'm saving money, right? And we planned a shot this way where the squadron would come in and land this way and so forth. And John goes out, takes a look at that, walks to the other end of the field. I'm with him up the other way. He said, I think we'll shoot this direction instead. And all of the airplanes were, you know, turn them around, you know, I mean, and I'm trying to get a shot off. But that kind of stuff was really interesting. It's like the great story of Ridley Scott walking onto the set on Blade Runner and saying, wouldn't it be wonderful if those pyramid supports were the other way around, you know? Even the whole company had been called to shoot it, you know. But John is one of the great storytellers of all time.
You mentioned Milius's The Wind and the Lion.
Oh yeah,
as one of your favorite films. John wrote and directed that.
correct.
Great film from 1975, starring Sean Connery and Candice Bergen, Brian Keith as Teddy Roosevelt. A great, like, sweeping, I would say, that's the word that comes to mind, a sweeping adventure epic. Share a little bit what it is about that movie that just makes it so memorable for you.
Well, it's the romance. The romance. I mean, you know, from the score to the whole. John knows how to do the big shot, and he knows how to do the grandeur of the big shot. And I believe that was a Jerry Goldsmith score. Does anyone care that a Scottish sheik has a
Moroccan sheik?
Moroccan sheik has a Scottish accent? No, nobody. You know why? Boom, boom. Suspension of disbelief immediately, because it puts you in a fantasy immediately and just puts you right there.
Yeah, I read actually, Brian, that the dialect coach who was hired to coach Sir Sean with his Arabic dialect, she quit after 3 days.
I don't know that story. That's interesting. But, you know, it's working with John, you know, it's simple. We would just kind of say, all right, we'd get the idea of what he wanted. He'd tell us, because he's such a great storyteller, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to feel out of this set. And we would put our heads together and lay out how to deliver what he's talking to us about. He wouldn't tell us what he wanted to shoot. We would sort of let him know how we thought the sequence of shooting should go to deliver what he was telling us about. It was a really interesting way to work, because he'd look at it and go, great. And it was so fulfilling to be able to work that way. to have an artist tell you the story he wants to tell on canvas over here, and have you be able to go get the right paints and the right canvas for him to work on. It's a really marvelous way to work. Loved it.
Now, Brian, another of the favorites of yours is The Thief of Baghdad.
Oh, yes. Alexander Korda, 1940. Yeah, I mean, that picture was made during the Blitz and in London or outside London. Another of my reasons for that is the romance.
Yeah.
The romance in this, just for sheer entertainment of that motion picture. Just amazing, and I discovered that when I was very young in the farmhouse in Upland. I saw it in black and white for the first time, and I was amazed when I saw it in color.
Oh, the Technicolor in that film is just stunning.
Yeah.
And so ambitious, I think, for its time in terms of what was attempted with the effects and the grand splendor and the grandeur.
Well, I had a chance to work in some later years with one of the Korda grandsons, and he was representative of another company that was supervising a picture I was doing. It was when I was doing Vice Squad. It was the first picture I'd ever produced, and I had questions for him about that film that I enjoyed getting answers to. Yeah.
I love the 1924 Douglas Fairbanks version of The Thief of Baghdad. That is just that is a real dream film.
I mean, the stretched hugeness of the sets in that situation that were so large and yet very, very expressionist, so to speak.
Yes. And the fact that they were doing it at a time when they could tell the audience, you're going to see something you've never seen before.
Yeah.
That it was that new. No one had done things on that kind of scale, and somehow, to me, it still has that freshness. It's and it's hard to reproduce that in a way we're used to now. Boy, CGI, you can just do anything you can imagine, and there's a tendency for it to kind of feel like, so what?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I love the artifice where they had to do all of that with painting cardboard or something.
Well, I love the fact that I grew up through an era that had no CGI.
Yeah,
I mean, my career goes from analog to digital. I mean, I produced Max Headroom, the television series, in 1984 or 5 or something like that. And we were inventing stuff,
right?
And the standards and practices guy was in the hallway because we were satirizing his bosses. and
right.
His sweat was rolling and nobody had seen it, and we were trying to get it ready to just get on the satellite to get out there because we were running so far behind. And spending hours in the suites with the Harry and with Bosch and with all of these new invented systems, trying to figure out how to make a character believable living inside a computer, and traveling it through that. And I was working with two Englishmen who had, Peter Wagg and Steve Roberts, who'd come from London to where they had shot the initial pilot, and they got to Los Angeles and went, "Oh God, what is the architecture? How can we shoot anything here?" And so I found myself driving them down through the old industrial sections and down into the LA River,
right,
and through all of the buildings that were being torn down, and took them downtown LA and so on and so forth. And then we went to San Francisco for 2 days of second unit. But
I certainly appreciate that. Just that, I watched the Korda's version of Thief of Baghdad again, knowing we'd be talking about it, and just the ingenuity and I heard it was read it's the first movie to have used blue screen.
Yes, and it looked like it.
Yeah.
The flying genie
Mhm.
and a blue halo all the way around him because
Yeah.
they hadn't
Yes.
solved the clipping on the insertion over the blue screen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But it was really remarkable.
Yeah.
Really remarkable.
I mean-
And maybe in a few of the remaining minutes, we could talk about another favorite film of yours, which is 2005's Joe Wright directed version of Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley and Matthew McFadden, Donald Sutherland, Rosamund Pike.
Yeah.
Share a little bit about that. And again, you can use the word romance.
Yeah, well, I am, because that's I mean, the music, everything about that film, I just love to death. I think Joe Wright is an extremely talented director. And the choreography of the camera.
During
Yeah.
that ballroom scene, it's
Yeah.
extraordinary.
And even in the scene where they go to the party at the house, where and then other characters come through, and so the camera just keeps going, and here comes one camera, and a major character will take you to another place, and then so on and so forth. The way he choreographs, situations with the major characters, and not just baloney, all the major characters moving and interacting with each other, and then the camera moves to another interaction. Beautiful work.
It's really sumptuous is the word that came to mind for that production.
There's that one shot of her standing on the cliff with the blowing of her cape and her garment. There's just
Right off a cover of a romance novel.
yeah, exactly, absolutely.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just amazing work, and also the performances were fantastic. The closing of that film is grand, just grand. I mean, I think I love you. I mean, it was Matthew McFadden.
I found on YouTube, there's a compilation from about 6 or 7 different versions, film and TV versions of Pride and Prejudice, including one in Dutch. And what they do is they show the scene of Mr. Darcy's first proposal side by side, and it's so interesting to watch them, starting with Olivier up to the Keira Knightley version.
Wow.
And to see that, because every version until the last one, they're in the room, right? They're in that drawing room or whatever it is. And then suddenly, no, we're out in the rain. And it just, what an interesting kind of bold move to just shift that classic scene and just make people look at it in a fresh way.
Absolutely. Yes, very astute.
Yeah.
I really, that's a director.
Right.
That's what you're looking at. I mean, look at Atonement, what he did with the Dunkirk scene in Atonement. What a scene.
Oh my God.
I mean, that's
a scene. I look at that and I say, this is what movies were invented for. This is you can't do this in any other medium. And this is doing that all the way.
really, really amazing. I love this business, because then there's his Dunkirk, and then there's oh God, what's his name? The great director who just did Dunkirk. I did a visual.
For Nolan?
Yes.
Yeah.
His work is brilliant, also absolutely brilliant, the way he approaches that picture and the screenplay and so on and so forth. And the methods, I mean, putting miniatures together with full-size stuff in helicopters with a 60 millimeter IMAX camera, and they get everything lined up and getting ready to shoot, and the IMAX camera would jam, and they'd have to land and go to another scene. They had to be ready for everything on that. That production was absolutely brilliant.
No, he's a technical maestro.
The people who support him,
Yeah.
are just the best.
Joe Wright did another film that I don't know, not maybe everyone has seen, but it's really one of my favorite little hidden gems. He did Hannah with Eric Bana and Saoirse Ronan. Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
I think it's a very interesting movie.
That is very interesting. Yeah.
It's got such an interesting tone to it.
And as a matter of fact,
Very European.
They kind of kept that tone in the series when they approached the series.
Yeah.
Because really unusual, really good story. but
Yeah.
nicely done. I truly love this business so much. And it's like I've been very, very fortunate to have been able to share the sets with many brilliant human beings. And I'm just so fortunate. And if you're gonna work this hard and do this, you've got to love it a lot. I never, when I went to, for instance, I have here Dale Hennessy's storyboard book on King Kong.
Oh, this is your 1976 version, yeah?
Correct. And it's like when I walked into Jack Grossberg's office, who I had met and had done a few other pictures for earlier in my career. He handed me a deal memo, and I just filled out my name and signed it. And I said, "You fill in the number that I'm making. I don't care. You just tell me what you need to do, and I will go and do that." And I didn't know what I was doing on each individual day until I got my check at the end of the week to see how much money it was. One week I was the UPM Hawaii. The next minute I was the location manager. The next minute I was the location scout. The next minute I would fill in. We called ourselves, Grossberg's kids. He was a grandmaster, and we did it because we loved it. And we were just constantly thrown into situations that were unique, wonderful, and magical. And we just had a wonderful time making that picture. David McGiffert, one of the great ADs of my time, was my production assistant on a series of commercials, and I pulled him into that picture. He got his DGA card on that picture. I mean, we're still close friends. We
That's great. Well, you say you've been fortunate, but what is the saying? Fortune favors the bold. Is that it, or
brave
like that?
Fortune favors the brave.
Oh, okay, brave. Well, I'm sure a lot of courage required to sustain a career in this industry, because it's not always easy.
But when you go from brainstorm to strange brew to spring break, that was 3 pictures with B and S in the title in 1982. I mean, it's wonderful, the variety. Every day you're doing something you've never done before.
It's fantastic. Well, Brian,
I've really enjoyed spending this time with you. Anytime you want to invite me back, I've got tons of more stories.
Oh, we're so grateful. Thank you. This has really been a delight for both of us. Thank you so much, Brian Frankish, for joining us on the show.
Gentlemen.
Thank you, Brian.
The time.
Thank you for joining us on the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. Please subscribe to stay up to date on our newest episodes.